So hello and welcome to Investigate the Internet, How Media Literacy Enhances Legal Research. My name is Jenna Pontius, and I'm the Public Services Librarian at the Riverside County Law Library. And I'm the presenter, and I'm going to be going over some housekeeping items before we begin. So you are in listen-only mode. You can use the chat for informal questions or just informal chatter, and the Q&A feature for questions. Andy, my coworker, will be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A, and I'll answer questions following the presentation at the end. This session will be recorded and made available in about a few days after the presentation. So I would like to begin with doing a poll. So, what social media do you use? You should see a pop-up that has a list of choices to vote for. I'll give everyone about 30 seconds. The choices are Blogger, Instagram, an RSS feed, Google+, Tumblr, Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Okay, I'll give just a few more seconds. Okay. So hopefully you're able to see the results. It looks like YouTube was one of the highest ones used, followed by Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. And no one chose Tumblr. So now that we've done the poll, we'll go through our learning objectives. We're going to learn what media literacy is. We're going to learn about the different types of media. We're going to learn about the techniques called 4 methods of fact-checking and Sift. We'll complete an activity together to learn how to apply the methods that we learned, and we'll learn how to apply media literacy and fact-checking to legal research. So what is media literacy and why is it important? Media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and communicate using information in all forms. Let's say you leave the office of an attorney after asking for a price quote on a consultation and someone stops you saying that they can do it cheaper, they just need the cash up front. How do you assess this situation for reliability and trustworthiness? Can you assess what they're wearing? Do they have a business card? How are they speaking to you? So those are what you would use to judge if that person was reliable and trustworthy. So this is what you are doing for internet sources. In legal research, your goal is to get accurate, reliable, and helpful information. So media literacy gives you the tools to help you read and investigate the internet, especially during emotionally charged situations, like if you're being sued or handling a legal matter. So this gives you a foundation so you're able to put those tools into use so you make the best choices for yourself. And I have a video that will further explain what media literacy is.
I'm Joey Papa, and I love media. I'm a media maker, communicator, husband, and father of 5. This summer, I learned that we, all of us, should be getting ready for the first ever Media Literacy Week here in the US. Great, but what is media literacy? I had no idea. When I think of literacy, I think of books, learning how to read, right? Then I learned that media literacy is about reading the media from a critical point of view, understanding that we're living in relationship with media, because we are. And I started to see media from a whole new perspective. And then I started thinking, when are my kids, when are any of us not plugged into some sort of media? Am I okay with my kids, with anyone's kids, spending nearly 11 hours a day with media? how much of what my kids believe to be true is coming from a voice in media, not particularly in line with my own? Whose messages are they walking around repeating? Is there any space between who they are and the media they're immersed in? What role is media playing in their lives? In our lives?
So, since studies show that we are spending up to 11 hours on our devices and using the internet pretty extensively, it's important to learn how to use the internet to our advantage. So, we will turn now to learning about the different types of media. So, what are the different types of media? We have print media, broadcast media, visual media, and social media. And would anyone want to share an example of print media? And Andy, if you look at the chat, you can unmute yourself and tell me if anybody put in an example. Well, if not, print media is magazines, advertising, and newspapers. Broadcast media is radio or TV. Visual media is infographics like the one that I sent you or photographs. And social media are sites like Facebook, Twitter, or Reddit. So knowing what type of media you're investigating is important because media presents with different types within the different types. So a radio ad is going to be different than a pop-up on the computer or an ad in Facebook. And what we'll be focusing on in this presentation is on the internet and social media. So our first method of reading the internet is the 4 methods of fact checking. So one is check for previous work by others. And so if you found an attorney's blog about DUIs, you want to check what other attorneys are saying about DUIs to see if there are similarities or differences. The second is find the original source. If you saw an ad on Facebook, you can find the original source of where that ad came from or a pop-up. Number 3 is reading laterally. So you want to read what others are saying about the source. You can click on links and open new tabs. Are there comments on the attorney's websites? Are there Yelp reviews? And you can use the Cal State bar to look up attorneys. And reading laterally isn't a deep dive. It's just a quick review of a website and then checking links and authors and other information on your original site or post. And does the company say anything about the website that you're looking at? Think of athletes doing commercials for products. And fourth, you can circle back if you get lost. The internet is a rabbit hole, so you can notate where you start. Maybe keep one tab open of your starting point and then open subsequent tabs so you don't get lost. A second method is SIFT, which stands for Stop, Investigate the Source, Find Better Coverage, and Trace Claims, Quotes, and Media back to the original text. It's similar to the 4 methods of fact checking. So you stop at the information that you found, you investigate the source by fact checking its expertise and agenda, maybe looking at Wikipedia as a starting point. You find better coverage by exploring other sites on the topic and looking for consensus. And then you trace the claims back to the original source. I will give an example of using the SIFT method of something that happened to me personally. So this is a picture of a post that I saw on Facebook that is from someone named Sharon, and it says, "I will not shop at Costco until you remove your mandatory mask rule." And then Costco responded, "Thank you for taking such a brave stand, Sharon. We look forward to the documentary they will make about you someday." So I saw this and I thought it was strange that a business like Costco would have a snarky or rude response to a customer. So I Googled Costco rude response to customer, and Snopes reported that it was false. There's a comedian that poses as an organization by creating fake sites and responds to the customers. So Snopes stated that the comedian's name was Ben Palmer. So then I Googled Ben Palmer comedian and saw his website, which included this post, which I had seen on Facebook. This is an example of finding the original source. A listing on the Google search for Ben Palmer comedian also had an article from BuzzFeed about him creating a fake site in 2015. So this is what others are saying about the source. He's saying it about himself. He's providing that information that he's done this before. And since he has done something like this before, it made sense that it's his shtick for his comedy routine. And BuzzFeed is actually a website that I interact with more frequently than Snopes. So once I found the BuzzFeed article, because I was familiar with BuzzFeed, I felt that it was legitimate and that information was correct. So before we start our activity together of using the 4 methods of fact checking or Sift, you can get your handout that I provided about evaluating a news article. Even though it's about a news article, we can still apply the information to reviewing websites. So you're going to be looking to see if the website headline matches the content of the article, if the references and links are working. We're also going to be looking for grammatical and spelling errors on the website itself. So our activity is we're going to analyze a website using our media literacy skills. And the website is allaboutexplorers.com. And I'm going to switch over to that site. And can everyone see the site? Andy, can you let me know if someone says in the chat that they don't see it? So we'll use, I also sent a media analyzer out. Hopefully you received it. And so we're going to use our media analyzer to analyze this website. So this is the main page of the website. And one of the ways to check websites is to check on the links in Explore. So we'll go to Explorers A to Z. And here is a list of explorers. And we are looking to see if the links work, if there's authors listed, if there's spelling and grammatical errors. So we'll click on Christopher Columbus, and I will read this first paragraph for you on the article about Christopher Columbus from the site. Christopher Columbus was born in 1951 in Sydney, Australia. His home was on the sea, and Christopher longed to become an explorer and sailor. However, as a young man, Christopher went to Portugal and got involved in the map-making business with his brother Bartholomew. This business made Columbus a rich man. His maps are still found today in every library in the world. So using the media analyzer, what is the source? We can provide a summary of the source. Can the content be verified? Was there authors? Did the photos have a caption? Here's a photo of Christopher Columbus right here. So is this a trustworthy source? And you can use the chat and you can say why it's a trustworthy source, why you think it's trustworthy or not. So while you're evaluating that, I'm going to go back to my presentation. No, that is incorrect. Where's my, here it is. Okay. So hopefully you found that that was not a trustworthy source. It said that Christopher Columbus was born in 1951, which is incorrect, and that he wanted to get into map making. And someone also said that it's not entirely trustworthy because it's not a .org or a .edu website. So that's a good thing to point out. The address of the website was just a .com. So no, that site is not a trustworthy source. It was giving incorrect information and it wasn't from a .edu. There wasn't authors listed. Although the links worked, the information was not correct. So taking what we've learned in practice, how can we apply them to your own legal research? Let's say for case law or using your own social media accounts. So legal research is the purpose of legal research is to find authority that will aid in finding a solution to a legal problem. So you are searching for information and that's authoritative or good law for your specific legal issue. Authoritative or good law are laws or court decisions that are currently in use and have not been overturned. For example, if you were looking to build an addition onto your house, you'd want to use the most up-to-date building code and not one from 2000 or earlier. And you can do legal research online or physically in a library, law library, the ones that are open right now. So just a brief look at what is law. It's the system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. So primary authority laws are mandatory in application and we are required to follow them. The law definition is from the Oxford Dictionary, and this slide also shows the federal process with the US Constitution and the state level with the California Constitution. So the executive is the president who signs laws into being and issues proclamations. The legislative of the House of Representatives and Senate, they propose laws and vote to approve. And then the judicial is the Supreme Court, which enforces law. And then within California, we have the governor who can write orders as well, the California state legislator, which proposes laws and votes, and California Supreme Court, which enforces those laws. So that's a very brief look at law and how it's set up at the federal level very briefly, in California very briefly. This will help you in your legal research, knowing where to look and the jurisdiction. So legal research steps. So knowing how federal and state laws are enacted helps with knowing where to look for the information. So when starting your research, you should consider these questions: the subject matter, the place, and the property. And you should consider the cause of actions or the grounds for defense. What type of lawsuit will it be? Civil or criminal? And who are the persons involved and what are their relationships? You can start with a secondary source like practice guides or legal encyclopedias, NOLO, and treatises. And when doing your search, you can try different combinations of search terms. And then once you've used your secondary source, you continue on with primary sources and finding tools. A primary source is the law, and the finding tools are the ways that you would find that by indexes or digests. And you don't want to rely solely on case annotations, the cases that list other things. You don't want to rely on that solely. You want to look at other ways and other sources as well. So continuing legal research steps, you can find if there's cases similar to yours. You can use the secondary sources to find case listings. And you can also do a legislative history research, which involves collecting documents that are generated during the legislative process, so researching the history of a bill. And that's just some notations for legal research that you can do. If you're looking for maybe the history of building codes, you can do a history of a specific build regarding building codes. Some key terms for legal research. Shepherdizing is tracing the history of a case because you need to cite all the valid cases. This is something that is done using the Lexis database, which we have remote access to. A statute is an act or a law written and passed by a legislative body and signed into law by the president. And statutes are published in order that they are signed into law. There's bills that are proposed statutes that if passed, they become law. A code is a collection of statutes systematically arranged, usually by subject. And then common law is understanding that the collected history of cases, in addition to statutes, are considered laws. So similar cases should be treated in a similar way. So if you're researching a case on DUI, the outcomes should be rather similar, depending. There might be some extenuating circumstances, but generally it should be the same. Some more key terms that, and I apologize for the spelling error. A citation is a reference to a specific legal source format. It's usually the volume number, the publication title, page, or section number and date. So sometimes customers come to us with a citation that we'll look up to find the case for them using Lexis, Westlaw, or Fastcase. There's parallel citations, which provide several options to finding the same judicial opinion. There's regulations, which are rules and procedures that assist in enforcing the laws promoted by state agency. And case, which involves brief description, factual background, short history of its legal proceedings, and the court's reasoning in its decisions. And just to be aware, the citations start with the name of the case shortened, and there are series numbers. So sometimes there may be the same number, but it's in a different publication series. So if you have a citation that you're having issues with, you can contact the local law library. They should have a copy of a citation guide that they can look that up for you, or they can just look it up or provide you remote access to look it up yourself. So before we begin looking at legal research on the internet, just some things to be aware of. In the law field, there's a focus on the justice gap issue, which is the difference between the civil legal needs of low-income Americans and the resources available to them. So there was a report by the Legal Services Corporation in 2017 that found that most low-income individuals were provided with inadequate or no legal help. So a large percentage of people are doing research on their own. And one aspect of the gap is access to information, which is limited on the internet. So online, you can find legal guides, legal aid groups, and court sites, but the challenges are finding correct information specific to your jurisdiction and case, and generally assessing the information that comes up in your search as good law. So if you're performing a search, you should specify that you are searching for California law. Sometimes you might just type in a search to this Google search engine and it'll come up with like Massachusetts law, which would not apply to you if the issue is happening in California. And the legal community in the United States is pretty heavily regulated for the unauthorized practice of law, which also results in challenges in finding basic information online or free legal advice. So at the law library, you'll probably hear the librarian saying that they cannot give legal advice on how to fill out the form. They can only give you legal information on where to find the form, a listing of forms that you can then choose to print. So when consulting an attorney on your legal issue or talking to a law librarian, you'll probably hear "it depends" a lot. So legal issues depend on a lot of different factors like jurisdiction, who's involved, the time period. There's just a lot of factors going into it. So you might hear "it depends" quite often. And it's not advisable to do legal research just using government documents. Sometimes things are slow to update. So you want to use a variety of primary and secondary sources in your legal research. So we'll put it into practice. You want to find information about evictions, but how do you know if the info you found is legitimate? Using an internet browser to search like Google, you can use the term Evictions Law California, which in the picture that's added to the slide, you can see that I typed in Evictions Law California, and it brings up a list of results, and usually the top results are sponsored ads. So you can see the first three have the word ad before the website address. And so how do you find trustworthy source within those that list provided? So using the 4 methods of fact checking or Sift, you could see what others are saying about a certain site by searching the site name. You can click on the links within the site, and a quick and easy way is to look at the web address at the top. This is what someone spoke about in the chat about the .edu or the .org. And so sites that are usually .org are used by nonprofits, and .coms are used by business, and .gov is a government site. So you can just do a cursory search of the list to see the web address, and you can see that the at least the first two on this picture for the ad. It's legalshield.com and fastevictionservice.com. So we know that .com now are businesses. So perhaps we don't want to use that as our starting point because a business is in business to make money and not necessarily provide you with the information that's specific to your needs. So there are trustworthy free legal sites like Cornell Law and Justia that provide access to case law for free, but note that when using search engines like Google, the results are tailored to you specifically, and the results that you will see will be different than someone else's, like your friends or your spouse's. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can watch the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. And there's also a library guide, which I will be providing a link of all the resources. There's a library guide from the Northern Essex Community College regarding Google searching. So the first search term, farther down on the screen after all the ads, I finally started to see sites that aren't ads. The first one is from the California court site, and since it's a .gov, I know that it's a government site and that the information should be up to date and legitimate. So this says evictions, eviction housing, self-help California courts, and it's from the it's from courts.ca.gov. And then after the Google prompting of people also ask, underneath that, there's something from another .gov site that says Governor Newsom signed statewide COVID-19 tenet and. So how do you determine if this is something that's going to be helpful to your situation? Is it describing the law? If you look at the link, it states that it's a press release after the .gov. And so this means that it's going to be released to the press, and usually press releases are for the public consumption. So they try to break down complex terms into understandable concepts and topics and understandable language for the general public. So this might be a good place to start for your search, just to get an idea of what kind of keywords are used when talking about evictions, and specifically what's going on with COVID-19. So while you're doing your search, you don't want to just search evictions law California. You want to try a different combination of search terms. So when I'm helping customers at my library, I usually do use Google, and I type the question of what I'm looking for. So instead of evictions law California, I typed in I'm being evicted in California. So we can compare the results from evictions law in California, which is on the right, and then I'm being evicted in California is on the left. And you can hopefully see in the picture on the left that it has the California courts website again. It also has nolo.com for two things: how to delay an eviction, defenses to California evictions, tenantstogether.org. So you can recall that a .org is a nonprofit site. And so there's this tenantstogether.org is providing COVID-19 tenant defense. So this I'm being evicted in California seems to bring up more choices than California eviction law or evictions law California did. So as I mentioned, there are free legal sites that you can use to get legitimate and trustworthy info. Some of them are Justia, Google Scholar, FindLaw, the U.S. Government Publishing, the Legal Information Institute, and the California courts. If you noticed that Justia or any of these legal sites didn't show up on the first couple of pages of result, well, you saw the first snippets, but doing the searches, these free legal sites did not come up as one of the top sources in the list for me. And so if you didn't know about these legal sites beforehand, you might not find them in your legal search, because if you don't know what to look for, you won't be able to find it. So the challenges of online research are that information will be pretty basic and will not necessarily answer your exact legal problem. So for example, a customer that I helped wanted to know what she could do if she was served divorce papers if she wasn't served correctly. So when I was doing my initial searching using Google about I typed in, I didn't get served properly in my divorce, and the results that were coming up were mostly about how to file for divorce. And I had to do quite a bit of digging to find what would happen if you weren't served properly. So sometimes you just might not find the information that you're looking for, and you can always ask a law librarian. So moving on to personal social media. So if you saw something like I saw about the Costco post, you can, on Facebook, you can fact check and find the original source. So generally, if you're using Google to search a topic, similar ads will post onto Facebook. So if you're searching about evictions, you might start to see lawyer ads or other legal related ads in your feed on your social media. So on this slide is a sponsored ad for FindLaw that came up on the library's Facebook, because as you could probably guess, I do a lot of searching for law issues on my using Google for work. And so when I opened the library's Facebook page, this law came up. So when you see ads on Facebook, you would still want to apply those methods of fact checking and stopping, finding the original source, looking to see what others are saying, because you want to assess the accuracy and reliability of those ads. So I recommend not clicking on the ad within Facebook. So you could see the Find Law ad and then open a new tab and type in Find Law, and then look up to see what is being said about Find Law and investigate a little further. So Facebook is a private company that makes its profits from consumers spending time on its site. So Facebook is designed to keep you logged in and scrolling. So the ads are going to be aimed at keeping you online, and the intent isn't to provide useful factual information, it's to keep you plugged in. So when you see ads or other things on Facebook, you definitely want to look into those further, especially if you are doing legal research using Google, and those like sponsored ads would start popping up. So let's say you saw an ad for a specific lawyer. You can fact check this by finding an original source or by looking at secondary sources. So you can go to the California State Bar and you can type in the name of the lawyer that popped up in your ad. And the California State Bar will say where the lawyer is located, give some information, and also say if they're in good standing or not. And they'll also list if there were prior violations or grievances filed against the attorney. So you don't want to just click on the ad in Facebook. You want to use some secondary sources to see if that information is correct and reliable and works for you. So to revisit what we learned today, media literacy is reading the media like the internet, Facebook, magazines, and photographs. We learned about the 4 methods of fact checking, which are check for previous work, find the original source, read laterally, and circle back. And the Sift method is to stop, investigate, find better coverage, and trace claims, quotes, and media back to the original text. We applied what we learned during an activity, and then we looked at using these methods during legal research, using the internet for legal research. So I'll be providing these links to you. This is just some further media literacy sites that you can practice on and some videos. And then if you have any questions, I will answer them. Andy, did we get any questions? I'll just look at the chat.
We didn't get any questions yet, so let's see if any come in.
Okay. So another site or another slide that I'll be sharing is the cited sources that I used to make this presentation. I don't want to take any credit. There's others before me doing media literacy. So again, I'm Jenna Pontius. I'm the Public Services Librarian at the Riverside County Law Library. We have social media that you can follow us on: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and videos on YouTube. I'll give it few more seconds. And then if there are no questions, I can end the recording. All right. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you feel more confident in reading the internet. That will help you access, analyze, evaluate, create, and communicate using information in all forms.